Hello and welcome to this evening's presentation, Food for Thought, Nutrition for Cancer Survivors webinar and cooking demo. Thank you for making your health a priority by spending an hour with us. I'm your host, Joan Heimbrook, Community Outreach Coordinator for the Franciscan Health Cancer Center in Indianapolis and Mooresville. And I'm excited for our team to share some great information and tips with you in this installment of our Cancer's Health Education webinar series. This evening, our experts will help you better understand the American Institute for Cancer Research recommendations for cancer prevention and survivorship, the role of diet and lifestyle in the prevention of cancer and recurrence for cancer survivors. And we'll share 2 quick and easy cooking demos to help you get on the right track to eating healthy and to help prevent cancer and recurrence. Now, before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping tips. For this virtual event, participants are muted, and we ask that you remain muted to help us avoid background noise and interruptions. We have some great resources for you in our handout section, so make sure you download those items before the session ends. If you have questions to ask the presenter during the handout section, If you have questions to ask the presenter during the presentation, please type them in the chat window and we'll be answering your questions at the end of the webinar. Our awesome administrator, Kirsten, is taking care of everything on the back end. So if you experience any technical issues, just type them in the chat window and we'll work to resolve them as quickly as possible. If you miss anything, no need to worry. We'll send out the recording of tonight's presentation to you in a follow-up email. Franciscan Health is home to some of the country's most well-respected physicians and clinical specialists, and I'm excited to introduce to you 2 of those experts who will be part of tonight's session. First, you'll hear from Kaylee Johnson, clinical dietitian in radiation oncology with the Franciscan Health Cancer Center in Indianapolis, as she discusses how to identify ways to decrease cancer risk through good nutrition and which cancers are influenced by weight and the foods we eat. You'll also learn via a food demo from Mickala Parsley, clinical dietitian in radiation oncology with the Franciscan Health Cancer Center in Mooresville. Mickala shares how to make 2 recipes that are not only quick, easy, and delicious, but packed with ingredients known for their cancer-fighting properties. Now let's get things started with a quick poll question to see why you decided to join us this evening. What sparked your interest to attend this webinar? A, I'm a cancer survivor and am interested in regaining and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and reduce my risk of recurrence. B, I currently have cancer and want to improve my diet to help my fight against the disease. And C, I've never had cancer but want tips on how a healthy diet and lifestyle can help prevent it. Let's see your answers. It looks like most of you are cancer survivors who are here and want to learn more about your risks for recurrence. And we're excited to offer you great tips and information and recipes to get you on the road to better health. So now, without further ado, please welcome registered dietitian Kaylee Johnson as she walks us through how a healthy lifestyle can prevent cancer and recurrence.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to talk with you all tonight. So nutrition for cancer survivors, but also for cancer prevention are relatively similar. So today we will talk about the American Institute for Cancer Research. They have 10 recommendations for cancer survivors. So we will go through all of those recommendations today. The American Institute for Cancer Research is a really great institute. They fund cancer research, but also on their website, they provide additional information and tools to help you prevent cancer and also survive cancer once you've been diagnosed. There are several things on their website like diet and lifestyle information on how to read food labels, a calculator to figure out your BMI, but also a cancer health quiz as well that will kind of walk through these 10 recommendations and kind of give you an idea on what to work on and what you're really doing well at. All right, so the first recommendation for cancer survivorship is to achieve and maintain a healthy body weight. Now, keep in mind, these 10 recommendations are not only for cancer survivors, but they're also for people who may not have cancer. And I know we're kind of like a 50-50 split. Some have cancer, some don't. So this is great for everyone to kind of follow. So on the right-hand side here, you can see a plate. This is called the New American Plate. The American Institute for Cancer Research kind of developed this idea. So 2/3 of your plate should be some kind of plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, etc. And then 1/3 of your plate or less should be an animal protein. So the goal is to try and get more plant-based foods. This will help reduce your caloric intake because you're eating more low-calorie foods. As you can see, several cancers are influenced by weight. These are listed on the slide here. One that I always like to touch on is postmenopausal breast cancer. So this one is heavily influenced by weight. As you can see, obesity, it does cause an increase in inflammation. It causes an increase in estrogen production and an increase in insulin-like growth factor. So if you have a chronic state of inflammation, this can actually promote cancer development by creating free radicals. If you have an increase in estrogen production, unfortunately, this can increase your risk for breast cancer and for endometrial cancer. So once you kind of hit that postmenopausal state, our adipose tissue or our fat tissue is really where estrogen is produced. So if you have more body fat, you will have more estrogen production because of that. All right, the second recommendation is to eat a diet rich in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans. So I have a little diagram here on the left, just kind of talking and explaining what a plant-based diet is. So kind of touching back on that plate, eating more than half of your plate as some kind of plant-based foods. So plants do contain something called phytochemicals. These are really just a fancy word for antioxidants, and they actually prevent our DNA from becoming damaged. So the goal would be to get around 3.5 to 5 cups of fruits and vegetables daily. Fruits, well, really plant-based foods in general, can protect against several cancers, particularly colorectal, esophageal, head and neck cancers, and stomach cancers. But it can also decrease your risk of recurrence too, especially in breast cancer patients. The third recommendation is to be physically active. So I always tell my patients the goal is to move more and sit less. I don't expect anyone to start out big. You have to start small, make a plan, stick to it, and know that any movement is better than no movement at all. The key with movement is to combine some kind of cardio or aerobic exercise, gets the heart pumping, plus resistance exercise. So something like resistance bands or any kind of light weightlifting. Benefits of physical activity, I mean, there's a ton, but to focus on for now, healthy immune system is, of course, number one, especially in cancer patients. We want good, healthy immune systems. But this also reduces chronic inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, so it's decreasing our insulin levels, and it also decreases levels of sex hormones like estrogen. So physical activity, really any amount, can actually protect against breast cancer, endometrial cancer, colorectal cancers, and many more. So it's not just, preventing these cancers, but also decreasing your risk of recurrence. Any amount of physical activity can help decrease your risk of recurrence. Now, the recommendations from the American Institute for Cancer Research suggest at least 150 minutes Again, that's 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week. So the way I kind of classify those two is moderate would be, you're working hard, but you can still kind of have a conversation with someone while you're working out. And vigorous activity is, you're working really hard. It's kind of difficult to have a conversation with someone. So either moderate or vigorous activity, but you should also include muscle strengthening exercise 2 times a week. Alrighty, number 4, limit fast food and other processed foods high in fat and sugar. So this would include chips, candy bars, processed bakery goods, ice cream, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, these foods are good, but they are high in calories and low in nutrients. So one goal is to really eat foods that are nutrient dense. So kind of looking at this diagram that I have to the left, this shows you foods that are higher in nutrient density and then lower in nutrient density. So as you can see, mainly vegetables and some fruits are very nutrient dense. So they have lots and lots of good nutrients in those foods. Whereas you get down to like pepperoni pizza, cheeseburgers, potato chips, the nutrient values in those really are lacking. So a goal that I give people is, it's okay to have these things in moderation, but you really, really want to increase those plant-based foods. Processed foods are also high in sodium. So sodium is used as a preservative in certain foods like boxed foods, frozen foods, that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, salt can damage our stomach lining, leading to inflammation, which actually can cause stomach cancer. So in order to lower your risk of that or lower your risk of recurrence, definitely wanting to make sure you're limiting fast food and limiting processed foods.
Okay, we've had some great information so far, but before we move on, let's test your knowledge with another poll question. Poll question number 2, you don't need to limit your intake of red meat such as beef, lamb, and pork as long as they aren't processed or cured. True or false? All right, we thank you for being engaged with our poll questions, and the answer is false, and 91% got that right. Red meats should be limited in a healthy diet, even if they aren't processed or cured. And now we're going to go back to Kaylee to find out why.
All right, good job. So we'll kind of talk about that now. The 5th recommendation is to limit intake of red meat and processed meats. So red meat would be beef, lamb, or pork. And ideally, you should eat less than 18 ounces per week. Processed meats would be anything that is smoked, cured, salted, or fermented. So deli meats, hot dogs, bacon, sausage, bologna, that kind of stuff. Now, when we eat red and processed meats, our bodies actually convert this into a carcinogen, and that's called an N-nitroso compound. So these compounds are actually created from the iron that's found in meats. Now, the N-nitroso compounds can also form from nitrites that are used to preserve meats, for example, in lunch meats and stuff like that. So there has been some research saying for every 3.5 ounces of red meat consumed daily, your risk of colorectal cancer increases by 17%. So for processed meats, research has indicated that for every 1.5 ounces of processed meat consumed daily, your chance of developing colorectal cancer increases by 18%. So unfortunately, this is something that you would want to limit. Now, chicken, fish or seafood in general, and turkey would not fall within these guidelines, unless, of course, it's a deli meat or something like that. So chicken, fish would be good options instead. Eggs, nut butters, nuts in general, beans, and soy foods are also good protein options to consider. I will add that cooking meats at high temperature or over an open flame can actually or potentially could create more carcinogenic compounds. So caution with grilling. I know we're kind of getting into the grilling season, and every now and then it's fine, but if you're grilling out for every meal, keep in mind those really hot temperatures could be a little harmful. Okay, number 6, limit intake of sugar sweetened beverages. So this is really, sugary sodas, coffee with lots of sugary creamer, sweet tea, lemonades, that kind of stuff. The American Heart Association has developed kind of a guideline for sugar intake. For women, we can have up to, primarily less than 25 grams a day. For guys, they should have less than 36 grams of sugar per day. So this would include added sugar. So not necessarily sugar from like fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about sugar from sweet teas, Coke, that kind of stuff. So my picture to the left here shows a 12-ounce can of soda, which is a pretty typical serving of soda. So as you can see, the serving size is 1 can. There's 140 calories. And then where you see total sugars there, and then underneath it says 39 grams of added sugar. So all of the sugar in Coke is probably white sugar that's physically been added to the drink. So you can tell based on these American Heart Association recommendations that we've far exceeded our 25 grams daily as women or 36 grams daily as men. Oftentimes, patients aren't only drinking one, they're drinking more than one. So what I suggest is really looking at your drinks and where can you make changes in the beverages that you're consuming throughout the day. I will say lots of excess sugar can lead to weight gain. So this could potentially lead to an increased risk of cancer. So if you've gone through cancer treatments, really focus on these drinks and try to find something different. So like water, black tea, unsweet tea, sugar-free lemonades. I have a product that I like to suggest to my cancer patients. It's called True Citrus Products. It's kind of like Crystal Light, but they don't use artificial sweeteners and they don't use sugar to sweeten these drink mixes. So it's a drink mix. You can buy it at the grocery store. They actually use stevia to sweeten it, but they have lemonades, limeades, all kinds of stuff. So rather than using Crystal Light, I'll have patients take a peek at the True Citrus Products at the grocery store. Okay, so a couple things that I do like to talk about, kind of going off of the sugar sweetened drinks section. I have 2 questions here that I get often. Does sugar feed cancer and do artificial sweeteners cause cancer? So both of these are not true. Sugar does not directly feed cancer. It's kind of a confusing topic, and I understand why patients get concerned about this, but when we eat, whether it's all sugar or some kind of carbohydrate like bread or fruit or something, our bodies break that down into something called glucose. So this is technically sugar in our blood. And so this glucose is actually used by almost all of our cells for energy. It's the main source of energy that we need. So yes, if you have cancer, that tumor will use that glucose for energy, but when you have sugar, it's not creating a tumor or causing a tumor that already exists to kind of grow out of control, if that makes sense. And honestly, if you stopped eating any kind of sugar or any kind of carbohydrates, your body will still make this glucose using protein and fat. So unfortunately, there's really no way around it, but just know you're not doing harm to your tumor if you are eating sugar. Now, kind of on the opposite side, artificial sweeteners. Several of these studies were conducted quite a bit ago, so like in the late 1900s, early 2000s, and they were actually done on mice and rats, which we've kind of figured out, maybe don't represent humans as well as we thought that they did. So some of these studies have been discredited, but as of now, these artificial sweeteners, for example, like sucralose, saccharin, aspartame, they are not linked to causing cancer or increasing your risk of cancer. So hopefully that provides a little bit of calm to the storm. So artificial sweeteners are okay to have. Number 7, the 7th recommendation is to limit alcohol use. When we consume alcohol, this breaks down into a carcinogen called acetaldehyde. Unfortunately, this carcinogen has been linked to an increased risk of breast cancer, colorectal cancer, esophageal, liver, head and neck, and stomach cancers. Now, if you've gone through treatment already, still alcohol, like I said, it does break down into a carcinogen, so it can increase your risk of recurrence or even developing another kind of cancer. When alcohol and tobacco are used together, this actually multiplies even more your risk of getting mouth and throat cancer or increasing your risk of recurrence. So when we drink alcohol, the ethanol in that alcohol really acts as a solvent, and it actually enhances the penetration of carcinogens into the cells. Alcohol also creates free radicals that are damaging our DNA. Despite any claims that alcohol is heart healthy, alcohol in any amount, in any form, is actually not recommended for cancer survivorship or cancer prevention. So keep that in mind. Some research has even indicated that in postmenopausal breast cancers, even a modest amount of alcohol intake could increase your risk of recurrence or development of breast cancer. Number 8, this is actually one of my favorite things to talk about. Do not use supplements for cancer prevention. So there are 2 studies that I like to point out. One is called the SELECT study, and the other one is called the CARROT study. So in the SELECT study, these participants were given several different supplements, but one was selenium and one was vitamin E. So they actually noticed an increase in prostate cancer cases in patients who are taking vitamin E. So they actually told the men to, stop taking this because this was a result that they were seeing. With the CARROT study, they actually were testing other antioxidants as well, including beta carotene. So, of course, if you are a smoker, you do have that increased risk of developing lung cancer. But in smokers who were taking beta carotene, they found that you have an even higher risk of developing lung cancer by just taking that beta carotene supplement. So there are certain circumstances where supplements are necessary. So especially if you are a breast cancer patient, you're placed on vitamin D, calcium, those are necessary. Keep taking those. I'm talking about if you're taking several of these supplements and they're not necessarily needed, really try to get those nutrients from eating more whole foods. You may actually absorb more of the nutrients by eating whole foods rather than taking like a multivitamin or a single dose vitamin. I always tell patients, eat what you can. And if you really are lacking in nutrients, of course, take some supplements. But really try to get those nutrients from plant-based foods so that way you're absorbing it all and you're getting the best fresh nutrients. Number 9, breastfeed if you can. Now, I understand this recommendation can be difficult for some women. Breastfeeding is tough. So that's why if you can do it, do it. If not, it's okay. So breastfeeding, it can protect against future breast cancers in women, ovarian and endometrial cancers. But for the baby, it can also decrease the baby's risk of becoming overweight or obese. So as we know, excess weight can increase your risk of developing certain cancers, but it can also increase your risk of recurrence as well. So when someone breastfeeds, the thought is, you're actually eliminating cells with potential DNA damage because you're exfoliating that breast tissue when you're nursing a baby. So that way you're getting rid of any potential cells with DNA damage. It also decreases your risk of, or your lifetime risk of estrogen because your menstrual cycle is pretty much halted. So those are the benefits that come along with breastfeeding. And last but not least, number 10. So after a cancer diagnosis, follow these recommendations if you can. These guidelines really can help prevent new cancers from developing and also lower your risk of cancer recurrence. It will improve your quality of life. The goal here is, get more plant-based foods. This will help make you feel better, and it can also help prevent things like diabetes, osteoporosis related to your treatment, or even heart disease. The goal for any kind of, pattern throughout your life, it's supposed to be a lifestyle. It's not supposed to be temporary. So take these recommendations into consideration and just try to fit in what you can and make it so that you can do it for the rest of your life. So a couple other hot topics that I'll touch on really quickly. I get a question a lot about organic versus non-organic foods, and right now there's really no evidence stating that organic food will decrease your risk of cancer. Honestly, don't worry about buying organic versus non-organic. We'll kind of touch more on this in a second. Calcium and cancer risk. So I get this question a lot as well. Right now, the evidence is not strong enough to determine if dairy lowers breast cancer risk, but there is evidence suggesting it can decrease your risk of colorectal cancer. Also decrease your risk of recurrence if you have colorectal cancer. Last one, genetically modified organisms. This has been a hot topic for a while now. Right now, there is no evidence to say that genetically modified organisms affect your cancer risk. So there's no evidence saying it causes cancer. There's no evidence saying it doesn't cause cancer. So right now, you don't be afraid of genetically modified organisms. GMOs are not necessarily unsafe to eat. Insulin was actually made with genetic engineering, and we, of course, still use insulin to this day. GMOs or produce is mainly used to prevent insects from basically killing off a crop. So one example that I have for you is in Hawaii, there was this virus called the ring spot virus, and this almost killed the entire population of papayas in Hawaii. So they created genetically modified papayas, and this pretty much brought back the entire papaya population to Hawaii. So it's not that we're changing the DNA, we're just kind of recreating some of these things to help live longer so bugs and insects and stuff don't kill out our food sources. Okay, so going back to the organic versus non-organic foods, if you have more questions or you're scared and you still need more answers, this website is really, really great. I refer to this website a lot. It's called safefruitsandveggies.com. It has an abundance of information for you. And one thing that I'll show you is the calculator that they have. So as you can see, we click the calculator. It's called the pesticide residue calculator. So we'll hit start calculating. And then you can select your gender and then your age. So for this instance, I've selected women. And then you can pick any fruit or any vegetable. So for this one, I picked blueberries. And this tells you how many servings of blueberries you would have to eat in order for these pesticides to affect you in any way. So for blueberries, a woman could consume 13,225 servings of blueberries in one day before these pesticides may have an adverse reaction on the body. So this is a really, really nice website to kind of play around with. That's why I say, if you can't afford organic produce, don't fret. There is no indication on why one may be better than the other. So if you want to buy the regular produce, that's fine. So I encourage you kind of visit this website, play around with the numbers. You can even test it on your kids too to see how many servings they would have to eat of something in order for these to be harmful to you. So some ways to learn more. I never like to hang or leave my patients hanging. So I always have options for people. These are 4 websites that I encourage you to visit. So of course, the safefruitsandveggies.com is on there, but also the National Cancer Institute, the American Cancer Society, and Cancer Support Community. All 4 of these websites have really good resources for cancer survivors. And last but not least, we do have a survivorship class called Moving Beyond. So it's an 8-week program, totally free to our cancer survivors. Right now it is all virtual, so you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home to participate. We have a different topic each week. I actually teach the second week of class, and we kind of review nutrition, and we'll work on reading food labels and how to find what foods may be better than the others, or just trying to find the best choice of foods. But there's also, self-care, spiritual well-being, all kinds of stuff included in this program, and it's really a fantastic program for our survivors.
All right, thank you, Kaylee, for your expertise and for providing so much food for thought about nutrition and cancer prevention. We'll talk with Kaylee again in a few minutes during the Q&A, so don't forget to type your questions so Kaylee can answer them for you in just a bit. Before we move on, we want to congratulate Kaylee on passing her specialty exam last Friday, as she has earned her CSO as a dietitian, and that means she is now a certified specialist in oncology. That's a really big deal. There are only a handful of dietitians in the state who have earned those credentials, so we congratulate Kaylee. Now we move on to poll question number 3. We just want to see what you've learned. The question is, eating organic foods can decrease your risk of developing cancer, true or false? Let's see what you answered. And the answer is false. And that's correct. There is no concrete evidence that eating organic food prevents cancer. Now it's time to move on to our cooking demo with Mickala Parsley, registered dietitian with the Franciscan Health Cancer Center in Mooresville. Mickala will show us how to make a hearty yet healthy main course, as well as a tasty, power-packed smoothie.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mickala Parsley, and I am an oncology dietitian with Franciscan Health. And today I am so excited to share with you 2 of my favorite recipes that contain cancer-fighting foods. Cancer-fighting foods are excellent to include before, during, and even after a cancer diagnosis. So the first recipe I'm sharing with you today is called an egg roll in a bowl. This is a really easy recipe with healthy, nutritious ingredients that you definitely want to try at home. So we have a large skillet over medium heat, heating up right now, And the first thing I'm gonna add to my skillet is 1 tablespoon of oil. Now, I'm using avocado oil, but you can use any oil you have at home that you prefer. And once our oil is getting nice and hot, we're going to add in 1 small chopped onion to the pan. And we're gonna cook this until those onions are nice and soft. Now, the next thing we're gonna add to our pan is 5 cloves of garlic that have either been minced or pressed. Now, garlic is an awesome ingredient to include in terms of cancer prevention. And when you're using garlic, you wanna make sure that you're using fresh garlic. And after you mince it or you press it, that you let it sit for about 10 minutes. It takes about 10 minutes for an enzyme to initiate allicin, which allicin is the compound that is well known for cancer prevention. So we've got our garlic pressed, ready to go. It's sat for 10 minutes and we're gonna throw it into the pan. And we're gonna cook this garlic until it's nice and fragrant, about 1 minute. The next thing that we are going to add to our skillet is 1 pound of ground turkey. Now, if you're online and you're looking at egg roll in a bowl recipes, or if you're on Pinterest and looking up recipes, you may see a lot of recipes that call for ground pork. But the American Institute for Cancer Research recommends limiting red meat to about less than 18 ounces a week. And red meat includes beef, pork, and lamb. So that's why today I am using a ground turkey. You could also use ground chicken at home as another option for a white meat. And we are just gonna cook this until it is no longer pink. So this meal is great because it's low in calories, it's rich in protein, so it's gonna help keep you full, and it's filled with lots of nutritious vegetables, which is why this recipe is low calorie and really filling. Keep cooking that turkey. All right, so our ground turkey is pretty much done cooking to where there is no longer any pink, and we are gonna go ahead and get ready to add the rest of our ingredients. So the next thing we're gonna add to our skillet is 1 tablespoon of ground ginger. Ginger is a great ingredient to use in recipes at home, whether it's ground ginger, fresh ginger root, because ginger is really anti-inflammatory and it also has antioxidative properties. So it's great for cancer prevention, but not only cancer, really any chronic disease in general. So an awesome flavor, an awesome ingredient, very good for you to include at home. The next thing we're going to add is 3 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce. Now, anytime we're using something like soy sauce, we want to choose low sodium if it's available to us. We really want to make sure that we're paying attention to salt in our diet and limiting that as much as possible for overall general health. We're going to give that a good stir. And the next thing we're going to add is 3 teaspoons of rice wine vinegar. Go ahead and throw that in the skillet. And 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame oil. Now this oil is being added to the recipe more for that really authentic Asian flavor, not necessarily to help with the cooking process. It's just a key ingredient to make sure that this really tastes like an egg roll. And we're gonna really incorporate all of these ingredients. And the next thing we're going to add is a 1/2 cup of chicken broth. Again, choosing low sodium chicken broth if that is available to you to control the salt of our recipe. And we're gonna really give this a good stir and incorporate all of those ingredients. And the last thing we are going to add to our skillet today is 1 16-ounce bag of coleslaw. Now, bagged coleslaw is really key to this recipe because it's already prepared for you. You don't have to shred the cabbage, you don't have to shred the carrots. And you could also switch up this recipe by choosing a broccoli coleslaw mix to really change up the flavor, the nutrient profile. And it's really great because coleslaw is rich in cruciferous vegetables. That cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable. That broccoli, if you choose a broccoli coleslaw, that's a cruciferous vegetable. And cruciferous vegetables are excellent for cancer prevention, specifically colorectal cancer. So we're gonna go ahead and put the lid on our skillet and let this really cook down and steam up the coleslaw mix. I prefer about 10 minutes, but you can switch up the time depending on how tender you like your cabbage. Now, I actually already have some prepared today and ready to show you guys at home. This is the final product, our egg roll in a bowl. Before I serve my egg roll in a bowl, I like to add some sliced green onion on top. It really adds a nice pop of color. It adds some extra flavor to our dish, so it's a great thing to include. And you could also add extra soy sauce if you need, some sesame seeds on top. You could really get creative with this at home. So let's go ahead and give it a try. So delicious, so flavorful. You have to try this at home. The second recipe I have for you today is a smoothie recipe. I love smoothies because it's a great, easy way to fit in a lot of fruits and vegetables. Did you know that the National Cancer Institute recommends 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day? Well, a smoothie is a great way to help meet that goal. So today we are making my favorite smoothie, green mango power smoothie. The first thing we're gonna add to our blender is 1 cup of unsweetened almond milk. And we wanna make sure that we're using unsweetened almond milk to help control the amount of sugar in our smoothie. The next thing we're going to add is a 1/2 cup of frozen mango chunks. You can find frozen mango chunks in the freezer aisle at your local grocery store, and they're perfect for smoothies. They're already chopped up for you. The next thing we're going to add is 1 small frozen banana. Now this is a great tip for those of you at home who maybe picked up 1 too many bananas at the grocery store and they're ripening a little bit too fast for you to consume. You can always peel those extra bananas, chop them up and place them in your freezer, and they're excellent for smoothies. The next thing we're gonna add to our blender is 2 big handfuls of spinach. Spinach is rich in folate, it's rich in fiber, and it's an excellent source of vitamin C, all of which are great for cancer prevention. And the last thing we're gonna add to our blender today is 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder. Now you can use any protein powder at home. You can use a plant-based protein powder, a whey protein powder. I just recommend a vanilla flavored protein powder. And we're gonna pop our lid on and blend it up. All right, so once our blender is done blending our smoothie, we can pop the lid off and pour it into a glass. I like to use mason jars at home, but you can use whatever glass you have at home. And look at that color. Anything this color has to be nutritious, right? I promise that if you're a little bit nervous about adding spinach to your smoothie, you really do not taste it. As long as you have something sweet like the banana and the mango, it really overpowers any kind of taste of spinach. So let's give it a try. So creamy, so sweet, so delicious. And with that scoop of protein powder, it's gonna keep us really satisfied for a long time. Thank you for joining me today. And I would like to give a special thanks to the cancer support community for allowing us to use this beautiful kitchen today. If you would like more recipes and nutritious tips from a dietitian, you can follow me on social media at SeaSaltandKale. Thank you.
Thanks to Mickala for showing us how to make those great recipes. I was lucky enough to sample both when we were filming that, and I can tell you firsthand, they're both delicious and you really should try them at home. So now that you've heard from our experts, we're going to do some Q&A with Kaylee. And we've been getting some questions that you have been typing into the chat box, and we appreciate that. First question for you, Kaylee. Someone asked, why did my doctor suggest my husband go on a keto diet? It's horrid.
So I don't mean to laugh. I apologize. The keto diet is a new and emerging thing in the cancer world. So the thought behind it is that you are lowering your carbohydrate intake, or really any kind of like added sugar intake. So you're kind of like starving that tumor. But like we talked about, your tumor is still going to get that glucose for energy with the proteins and the fats that you have. I know a lot of research has been done on brain tumors, but honestly, I don't always recommend it when it's very difficult to follow. And two, there isn't any solid evidence that it is beneficial for cancer at all.
Okay, thank you. Another person, actually two different people, asked about sliced turkey that's bought from the deli or the lunch meat section of the store. They want to know if that is bad, if that's considered processed food.
So unfortunately, that would still be considered processed. Even though you see like the actual big turkeys or hams there, they still put the preservatives in those items. And so unfortunately, it would still be considered a processed meat.
Okay. Several people also asked if you could repeat the information on the citrus packets that you put in your water.
Yes, absolutely. So again, those are called True Citrus. They are it's similar to a Crystal Light. So it's a flavoring packet that you can add into water. They have lemonades, they have limeades, I think they even have iced teas. They do not use added sugar to sweeten it, and they don't use artificial sweeteners. They actually use stevia, which comes from a plant, and it's hardly really any stevia in these products. And so most of the time it's just crystallized lemon or crystallized orange. So it's really nothing added to it. And this is a really good option if you really just don't like water and you need to drink more of it. You can add these into your water to get nice different flavors. You can find them really at any grocery store. There's some in the section where you would actually find the Crystal Light stuff. And again, that's called True Citrus.
Okay, and I also found it on Amazon.com as well. So they had all of the different flavors if people want to look there as well. And with that in mind, Kaylee, someone also asked about artificial sweeteners. They said they're really bad for their bladder. They can't handle those. So they wanted to know if you, if they were using regular sugar products, but should they stay away from that? And is the stevia in the True Citrus then okay for that?
So the stevia in the True Citrus would be okay. Unfortunately, I would recommend that you try to decrease your intake of the regular sugar sodas, just because sugar can lead to extra calories, and that extra calories that you're taking in could lead to weight gain, which in turn could increase your risk of cancer development or increase in your cancer recurrence. So really try to decrease the regular soda intake. But yes, the stevia, it would not count as an artificial sweetener, and it does not count as sugar.
Okay, Kaylee, someone also asked about if they should buy organic chicken, and also ask about the rotisserie chickens that you can get ready-made at the grocery store.
So with organic animal products, it's a little different. So with the produce, they're actually spraying like specific pesticides and stuff on it. Whereas the like meats or the milks will have that's coming from an animal that's eating certain things. So I actually do myself buy organic animal products like milk, cheese, chicken, like you've asked. And then with the rotisserie chickens, those typically do have some processing to them. One thing that I like to caution is just lots of salt. So if you're able to get one that's not as, I guess, already pre-seasoned, then that would be okay. I just get nervous when they add their own seasoning because they tend to overdo it on the sodium.
Okay, someone says, I'm a cancer survivor, but I still have issues with lack of appetite. What tips do you have to help with this issue?
So one tip that I give pretty frequently is to eat smaller, more frequent meals. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be 3 meals a day. I actually suggest trying to eat something every hour to hour and a half, but nothing huge. So something like a string cheese. And then in an hour, maybe try to have like half of a Boost or an Ensure. And then another hour or 2 hours, have half a peanut butter sandwich or something like that. The goal is to really make the most of each bite. So try to make sure that you're getting a good calorie-rich food, but also a good protein-rich food as well. Another tip that I have is to separate your drinks from your food. So if you're eating, really try to avoid drinking at the same time so you're not getting full on those liquids. So either drink like 30 minutes before you eat or 30 minutes after you eat.
Okay, someone has asked, what's your opinion on protein powders? What types of proteins are best for me as a survivor, and are they considered a whole or processed food?
So protein powders would not be considered a whole food. They would technically be processed, but don't let the word processed scare you in this instance. They're typically not filled with preservatives and that kind of stuff, but it's technically not a whole protein source, like getting it from chicken. For protein powders, I love them. I recommend them for patients every day, whether it's a whey protein powder or a pea protein powder, kind of like Mickala mentioned in her video. If you're struggling to get protein, those protein powders would be a good option.
All right, someone asked, should I be calorie counting, and if so, what are the current guidelines?
With calorie counting, I don't like to put a lot of emphasis on that. I would rather you kind of focus on what you need to improve in your diet. So if you need to improve, what you're drinking, kind of start there. And then typically your calorie intake will decrease. So if you're drinking regular sodas, if you cut out those sodas, your calorie intake decreases. So I don't like to always put an emphasis on calories. I'd rather you kind of look at each meal or each snack that you're having and say, okay, what can I change? Where do I start? And typically that results in calorie deficit or weight loss.
All right, another question is, should I only eat my fruits and vegetables raw, or is there a preferred way of cooking them that you suggest?
You don't necessarily have to eat them raw. You can cook them or steam them or something like that. I mean, either option, you're getting those good cancer-fighting nutrients like we talked about before. I will say most of the time, if something is raw, like raw broccoli, raw carrots, you will get the best source of those nutrients. Once you kind of start the cooking process, it can decrease the nutritional value of this produce, but not in a significant way that you should never cook your fruits and vegetables again. Steamed is a good method, but again, with that grilling or anything that's over an open flame, just be careful with that.
Okay, I think we have time for just another question or two. One question was, someone said they still have issues with diarrhea and constipation in their recovery. Can you suggest any foods that they should eat to alleviate those symptoms?
Yeah, so this is a common side effect. So for diarrhea, if you're already taking Imodium or Lomotil or those kinds of medications, you could try to incorporate some kind of soluble fiber. So soluble fiber is what bulks our stool rather than adding more water to it, helps keep it formed. A pretty popular thing for this is called Metamucil. So I'm sure you guys have seen commercials for this on TV. You can find it in the section at the grocery store that has the Miralax, Benefiber. So it's called Metamucil, and that can help kind of bulk your stools up if you're still having diarrhea. And then with constipation, I do recommend, really trying to push that water intake and aiming for 25 grams of fiber a day. I will say if you're trying to increase your plant-based foods, you will be increasing your fiber as well. So that should help with your constipation.
Okay, and we have one final question. We're running out of time. This question says, does dairy need to be limited in breast cancer patients?
Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Should someone with breast cancer or a history of breast cancer, should they limit dairy products?
No, so you can still consume dairy products. Like I said, if you want to buy the organic versions, that's perfectly okay. But right now, there's really no evidence, concrete evidence that's going to affect your breast cancer.
Okay, thank you so much. We want to thank both of our expert dietitians, Kaylee Johnson and Mickala Parsley, for sharing so much helpful information for us this evening. We also want to give a shout out to the cancer support community for allowing us to use their beautiful kitchen while filming those food demos. Franciscan Health and Cancer Support Community work in partnership to offer the Moving Beyond Cancer Survivorship Program. And as Kaylee mentioned, Moving Beyond is a free 8-week program that offers support and education to cancer survivors, their caregivers, and their families. The program is virtual through 2021, and when you register, you will receive great Moving Beyond kit, including booklets, exercise and food logs, workout bands, yoga mat, and all kinds of additional things. The Moving Beyond flyer is included in the handout, so please make sure if you're a cancer survivor, we hope you'll consider joining us for this great program. And finally, we want to thank all of you for attending tonight's webinar, Food for Thought, Nutrition for Cancer Survivors. We understand that your time is very valuable, so we thank you for prioritizing your time and your health to spend with us this evening. Once again, we'll send you an email as a recording of this session. Feel free to watch it again and share it with others who might find it helpful. You'll also receive a survey about the seminar and the content, and your feedback is truly important to us, so it will help us to make future seminars even better. So please, if you could, take a few moments to fill that out. And on behalf of everyone at Franciscan Health, we want to thank you for being with us, and please have a blessed evening.